Hello, I'm Jennifer Escamilla, and this is my overview of digital storytelling for instructional technology. So I'm just going to jump right to the point. Let's start off with what is digital storytelling. Digital storytelling, when I first heard it, it sounded a little complicated, but after doing some research, it's really not as hard as it seems. Basically, it's sort of like an animated story. It's telling a story in a digital format. Why is this important? Storytelling allows students to use more critical thinking skills and effective communication in a literary way. It's basically like an animated PowerPoint. Later in the slides, I'll show you some examples of those with some links. And here we have something that gives us a little more detail about what a digital story is. A digital story are multimedia movies that combine photos, video, sound, music, text, and it's sometimes a narrative voice. These stories can be used to integrate subject matter with knowledge and skills from across the curriculum. Okay. Every digital story follows a process just like a normal story would. So the first step would to be come up with your idea. What is your story going to be about? What is the main idea? Step 2 is to research that information, explore what it is that you're looking to include in your story. Step 3, you need to write the script. Step 4 would be a good way to do a storyboard or your planning. Step 5, you need to gather and create your information. Any images, audio, video, text, that would be included here. Step 6, you need to put it all together. And finally, step 7 would be sharing your digital story. One way to do that would be through YouTube. And then step 8, if you wanted to have the students do feedback or reflection to review each other and their digital stories, that would be included on step 8. Elements of digital storytelling, just like elements of a story, a digital story has elements as well. What needs to be included is the point of view, a dramatic question, which is something that will be answered at the end of the story. It needs to include emotional content, something that will speak to your viewer in a powerful way to get them interested. Possibly include your voice as a way to communicate to the audience. Sound effects are a good way to support your story. When it talks about economy, we're talking about we need to give the viewers something to interest them, but not so much information that we make them feel overwhelmed. And then finally, pacing. How slow or quick do you want your story to progress? Okay, another thing to think about is types or the uses of digital storytelling. How do you want your students or yourself, if you're creating this for a student, how do you want them to create their story? Do you want it to be a personal narrative, a historical context, or more of an informative context? I picked these 3 types because these are the most well known of digital storytelling and the most used also. I also have examples, like I said, later in the slide, and we'll take a look at those. So on personal narrative, that would be, for example, a story of your family moving to a new country or your personal learning experience. Historical information, you could use this in history context, such as you could do a recording and evaluation of Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. Informative, you could do this in math processes to teach the students the process of how to do those steps for an equation or anything like that, or even for the scientific method. So those would be some examples of how to use digital storytelling in those ways. Why is digital storytelling relevant to today's classroom? First of all, we all want to follow the level of Bloom's. We want our students to use those higher order thinking skills, and this provides an outlet and a way for the students to put what they have learned into that and use those skills. Anytime that they're using digital storytelling, it should help improve writing, reading, vocabulary, communication skills. Students are able to see their organized thoughts, research, and learning process. You could do this in teams so that in small groups the students have to learn collaboration. Far as literacy, if you wanted to use this in English, you could have them definitely do the elements of a story, sequencing. They're going to learn any of that from literacy will be included anytime they do a digital story because those processes are included. Engagement, student engagement is really important as far as having them interested in what they're learning. And also you could align your curriculum and standards. Okay. Common Core states that the need to conduct research and produce and consume media is embedded into every aspect of today's curriculum so that students develop the ability to analyze and create a high volume and extensive range of print and non-print text in media forms old and new. In other words, we are required not only by our standards, but we're obligated to our students to teach them content and curriculum that is relevant in today's world. Digital storytelling is a great outlet to do that. Okay, this is one of the slides where I've included some YouTube links. So if you click and control those, you could go to those and see what that is about. I tried to include one history and one science, and these are some different ways that they could be used. So for example, if I click here, control click, that should take me to this link. And here you will see an example of how a student used personal narrative in a digital story.
Have you ever dared to about what's below the waves? I travel down below the surf and find a diverse world that makes me wish I could stay forever.
Okay, so I'm going to go back now and there we go. Okay, so if you click those links, those are some great examples that I found that might give you some ideas on how you want your students to use a digital story in your classroom. Other ways that they could be used: documentary, explanatory, informative, biography, instructional, even a student tutorial, which I thought this was really important as far as math is concerned. If you wanted the students to be able to teach each other, they could give each other a tutorial. Okay, so moving on to math and literacy. Again, we have another link. I'm not going to take you to that because I showed you the other one. So anyway, character, story analysis, supporting an argument or claim, persuasive writing, research, processing information, and again, explanatory tutorials. Okay, so I teach art grades 1 through 5, and how I'm planning to use digital storytelling in this way is I want my students to be able to understand more technology and how it's related to art and the graphic arts. I want them to be able to use more animation and also work and see what it's like to be an illustrator, an author, and maybe even how movies are made and how that works. And so I'm planning to use that this year with some of my higher art students. And it's around our curriculum around 5th grade at their level, but you could use this for any level. And this is just how I plan to use it this year. Okay, these are a couple of websites that I researched and reviewed for digital storytelling. Out of all that I looked at, I would recommend these. The University of Houston, if you look that up, and I have those links on the references. They have a lot of information on the educational uses of digital storytelling. It's a great website that really breaks it down and tells you, what is a digital story? How does it work? What are the elements, the processes? And, by understanding those things, you could even create your own. So that is one of the best websites that I researched and found. It also gives you information on demonstrating the impact of digital storytelling and why it's important to teaching and learning. Another one, which was more of a blog, but also this one maybe didn't have as much information and definition as the University of Houston website, but this website offers some great examples in digital storytelling and how those really come into play in the classroom. So by looking at those examples, you really have a greater understanding of how you could use it as an educator, and also if you wanted your students to get a background and get their feet wet before they did their own, these would be two websites that you could have them look at for definition, information, and also examples. Edutopia is an article on the website here that gives you information on how you can use this information in the classroom and remember what digital literacy is. And it also discusses, I think, a few different references in there that you could look at. Gives you information about remembering yourself as the educator, that you are the executive producer, even though the students will be producing it at times if you have them choose to do that. Okay. All right. This is another website that I found where it has some great information and lots of different apps where you can find additional information and even digital storytelling apps that you may want to put on your iPad for students. So this is a great website for that. Okay, so in conclusion, what I've learned from this and what I hope you take is that the process of learning and discovering sources for digital storytelling is really interesting. It's fun. And I personally feel more confident in teaching this to my students now that I have a better understanding of what it is. Looking at different examples gives us a greater perspective. It helps us teach our students those higher thinking skills and offers us as instructors a new way into teaching, and also helps our students become the creators. Okay, so these are my list of references. I've got 2 pages, again, with some links if you'd like to look at those to learn more. And that concludes our PowerPoint for digital storytelling. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I hope it's really useful in your classroom. Thank you.